a great tour. I got to listen in on everyone's talks, and I'm really grateful for it. There was a lot of work going on tonight. We have another good half hour with each other as people are coming back into the main plenary. I hope you enjoyed your breakout groups. I really certainly enjoyed visiting them and listening in on the good conversations you were having. Really different conversations in each of the groups. I want to acknowledge all your work in the groups and thank Gwen again for pulling me in and out. Is someone playing music? I have a playing music. We should play music as we leave, but we have half an hour to report. So for those of you that were appointed reporters, thank you. Thank you for doing that for your groups and taking notes. And I appreciate you. I'll appreciate you too, because Chaz is my note taker. And B, thank you for coming. We found you and we placed you in a group. So I hope you had a bit of a chance to talk to. So can we start with, I think we had 5 groups, didn't we, Gwen? Can we start with, maybe we'll start, and let's get crazy tonight and start with number 5. We'll do a countdown and we'll have team number 5 report back.
Hi, I'm the reporter. My group actually, I couldn't see their videos, but I don't know. So hopefully, I don't know if that would make a difference, but here we go. Are you connected to this space? Everyone in our group is connected to this space. They all walk there, maybe not daily, but it's part of their, some people it's part of their daily routine to walk on the paths. They have, one person has dogs, they walk there. So yes, everyone is connected to the space and really keen that it be a green space that is welcoming. So are you connected to the space? What are our top priorities? Well, again, number 1 was just keeping the green space and making it. Several people mentioned that it needs to be accessible and welcoming. So that's really important. People, as we all know, people who are aging or have mobility issues, and so accessibility is important. One person mentioned an off-leash park, though she understood that probably may not happen. Somebody mentioned it would be nice to have business there. The next person said no business. so lots of ideas, but the consensus was keep the green space, make it accessible, make it welcoming. One person mentioned there should maybe be a bathroom because there's a park and there's cyclists and there's just a lot of people around who may need access to a washroom. So a washroom, yeah, I mean, I mentioned, you know, right now there's a lot of talk about intergenerational spaces. That would be important, that it be applied to all age groups. And some places across Canada, when you look at intergenerational parks, are just stations. So throughout the park space or cycling paths, they have exercise stations so people can actually stop and do some exercises, which are meant to be in outdoor parks. So that is, I'm really sorry if I've missed anything. Susan referred to them as third spaces and said that's really important, that we need to have that. Okay, and the third question is talents and skills. Well, we have a lot of talent and skills in our group. Okay, so we have people who like to garden and would be really interested in working in the gardening part. We have people who just like to work outside and be willing to work there. But our first thing we mentioned is we need a plan. Before we can donate, we need to have a plan, and so that we can know what we're working for. And so the plan is the #1 priority, to have some plans. And I said I've been to you know, both the city of Winnipeg have put on for their spaces. I've been to one, the University of University of Winnipeg, no, Manitoba, I think, have put together just renderings of possible for some spaces that the public's gone through and voted on and put forward what they'd like to see. So we need to have some sort of process for finding out what the public wants and working with maybe students from the University of Manitoba or Winnipeg, Red River College, to get renderings of possible ideas that we can get feedback on so that we can have a plan. And then some people said they don't want to do any fundraising. I understand that. I'm a project manager who's worked on a lot of community projects, so I'd be quite willing to work on proposals to try and get some funding for whatever the community decides to do. Again, the decisions have to be made. We have one person who's an IT project manager who also has a lot of knowledge about accessibility issues and spaces. So that could be important because accessibility was a major issue in our group. Okay, so I hope I haven't missed anything. I'll stop there.
Thank you. Well, thank you, group number 5, and thank you, Shirley. We'll move on to team number 4. So team number 4, are you muted or?
Muriel was our.
Muriel, you're muted.
Muted.
Okay, I think Muriel's trying to get off mute then. And
oh, there, I got it off finally.
Perfect.
Okay. Well, first of all, the connection to the property. Shelley and I live in Fort Garry, and Shelley lives in River Heights. So Margaret, though, lives in the area, and she lives in one of the 55 plus apartments there. And then Michael, he bikes along that area. And Cami, I'm not quite sure, but we'll come to Cami later. But what are the properties, the top priorities for the space? So we all decided that we definitely needs to be green space, needs to be a natural space. And you could have a combination of green space and benches. That was really important for people walking in that area, especially for all those buildings that are 55 plus with seniors and so on, that they would have benches along there. And the idea of the benches was also to see that the benches would be placed to see the river in the nice bend of the river. Like that would be important because I guess the view from there is quite spectacular. And it was important also to integrate the property with the other parts of the trail. And one person even mentioned putting a bridge pedestrian across the river as an idea. And somebody also mentioned about putting a plaque so you had the story of the place. And we found that was really important, that you know the history of this place, and that plaques could be maybe a couple of plaques along the trail. And it talked about also the rest stop besides the benches, of maybe, especially in the winter, maybe a warm-up place that was thrown out, but to sort of have the balance between the green space and maybe a place to warm up. It was also mentioned for maybe a shelter for if the people were cross-country skiing, and also the place for maybe to break the wind in the winter, so you'd have to have certain plants there, and that would increase also the biodiversity. But also, so they said the space and the shade and the shelter that was talked about. And we could also include maybe the transit right there as a park and ride place. And And also we talked about a structure for play, but so we said all those seniors are in those huge buildings, but maybe their grandchildren might want to come and have a small little play area or a little structure. And the aspect of how would you lend your talent to the site? Well, Cami had mentioned about taking her students and design an exercise, like people could come there as a group and exercise, and that maybe her students might design something of, you know, in conjunction with the site. Also, we felt that there should be a survey of the people in the community, because some of us who don't live in the community, we might not have the perspectives that the people would have who live there day and night. So that might be a good thing to do as well. So I think that was it. I think I covered everything.
I just think, sorry, Rod had mentioned foraging with berry bushes, that you could have natural berry bushes, and that would encourage people to come together and also be able to, I guess, get some sustainable food.
Yeah.
Anything else, team number 4? Good support there. Thank you, Muriel, and good support there, Shelley. And
I think that's it. Thank
okay,
you.
perfect. All right, we'll move to team 3.
So we didn't necessarily talk more about how we're connected to the space, because I think we went over that really well as a large group. And some of our top priorities have been mentioned already: accessibility, making sure the area is well integrated with other paths and greenery in the neighborhood. Also, again, having a park or a playground for children. And then going back to the educational signage, we should look at including indigenous flowers and plants with maybe some educational signage, instead of perhaps focusing on the Mulvey Brewery, to really indigenize the space and making it a learning space that recognizes our indigenous heritage as well. And in terms of accessible seating, things like an accessible picnic table might be handy for those who actually need a tabletop integrated into their seating, if they have some coffee or a book or anything like that with them. And then someone in our group also mentioned that when the flea market is open, the parking lot in the area can be very noisy. So making sure there's a natural sound barrier between that parking lot and the green space. And then in terms of talents and skills, one of our group members mentioned that 360 Osborne Street has composting on site that they take care of, and could possibly share some of the composting material with the green space. And I also sat on the province's Accessibility Advisory Council for 5 years and helped draft the upcoming standard on the accessible design of public spaces. So that will include everything from parks, pathways, sidewalks, and whatnot. So I can certainly lend some of my knowledge in that respect as well. And that was it for our group.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jessie. Anybody have anything else to add, team 3? Thank you very much, Jessie. We'll move on to team 2.
So I was a spokesperson for Team 2. It was very important, of course, as green space, but one of the things was importance was actually as a meeting place as well, where could go and gather and meet. And one of the key things that came out of that too was it was recognized that there needs to be an Indigenous involvement at the start of this, and not wait till everything is done and then invite the Indigenous people to come in and say, okay, we're going to do a token ceremony or something like that. So it's important to try to see if we can find some Indigenous people that would be willing to participate in this project. The thing is, as a green space, I think it's important to have some trees, shrubs, grasses, maybe even some prairie flowers. I mean, it takes a long time for trees to grow and mature, but I noticed that in Kildonan Park, where I'm closest to, is that in the summertime, people aren't sitting out on the grass in the sun. They're sitting underneath the tree in the shade. So I think it's very important to try to get some kind of trees planted in those areas. Of course, it's been mentioned before, I think everybody's kind of covered off everything we covered off as well, but having some kind of benches for people to be able to sit down and rest, and especially if people are gathering there to kind of chit chat. A connection with the trails between this trail and other trails throughout the city was an important thing too. Habitat for animals. If we get some more shrubbery in that, then you probably get a few more animals coming into the area. Accessibility, again, everybody's kind of mentioned about accessibility was important for all people. And yeah, an idea, I guess it hasn't really been mentioned, but maybe some kind of opportunity of partnering with some business community. And it's not to have businesses within the green space, but maybe businesses that are close to the green space that would help provide, people might like to buy ice cream or lemonade or whatever it is. So if there's businesses that are close by that somehow could be promoted to, or there maybe be advertisement or something for those businesses that people would know that they could go get some refreshments if they wanted in a close by area. I guess another thing, public artworks is an idea was, this possibility that we could have some kind of public art, and it wouldn't have to be a mural because it's not a big space, but it would suggest, you could have, say, like a 3D art of just something in the shape of a teepee or something, and then maybe have a table or a bench or something under there. And then if people, even at nighttime, could sit there and look up at the stars through something like that. Access and winter activities, that was also mentioned by somebody else before, but that's something too that we just don't want this space to be utilized in the summertime. We want it kind of to be an all-round, all-season use. The other thing that was mentioned was, do we have to have a safety audit of how to keep this area safe when people are using it? And that's something that might have to be done right off the bat, and not something that we think about developing the site and then an afterthought, thinking about, okay, is it safe for people to walk there in the evening time or at nighttime? As for people that could offer some assistance, Cynthia, she said, well, she can provide maps and trails. She has access to GIS. And Elizabeth Ma, she's around from the area, of course, and she's seen a lot of green space disappear over the years, and so she might be able to provide a little bit of history on what areas and what green space has been missing over the years. So that can kind of go into, maybe if we do where other people have mentioned the history of the area, is to kind of even have something like that, as to these are the areas that we've lost, so this is how important this particular piece of ground is to keep as green space. That's basically, I think I've got everything covered off. If anybody else in my group knows of anything I missed, please speak up now. I think that's it.
The aptly named Dave Green, everyone.
Yeah.
Thank you very much, Team 2. Did anyone else have anything from Team 2? Dave, open that door wide. Vicki, was that you trying to get in there?
No, that was me trying to tell my dogs to be quiet.
Your adorable Doberman. We've got a Doberman pictured there. My children are lobbying me for Dobermans, but I won't get distracted because we're going to go to Team 1, I think, next. Team number 1. Who's the reporter for Team number 1? Good job, Team 2.
That would be me, Steve here. So our group, our connection to the area, most of us live in or around the area, and our connection to the specific space is using it as an active transportation link, walking and cycling. And one of our group has been asking for more green space in the area since 2009. So that's a really long time. So this is really timely. In terms of priorities that our group talked about, there was a real interest in maintaining the area for transportation through walking and cycling. And another idea that was access to the river. I think that was spoken about just by Dave's group just now. We also talked, in that regard, we talked about doing something similar to what is done at the Hugo dock, where there's access down to the river in winter. So you have a path and stairs down so that you can walk or skate or cycle on the frozen river. And that would just really open up that area to so much more use in the winter. Also some talk about just beautifying the natural areas and letting nature take its course. Also the idea of what I think Rod's group has done in Churchill Drive area really beautifully, planting orchards and gardens. And with the idea of Osborne, Gordon Osborne being, there's so much affluence, but also a lot of poverty. So the idea of growing food and sharing it. And I think they do that in the Churchill Drive garden as well. Another priority was having some space set aside for a dog park. Another one was protected wildlife corridor, and with also the proviso of not using fireworks anywhere along the riverbank because of the impact that has on wildlife. Another priority was planting more cottonwood poplar because of its function in cleaning the riverbank, or cleaning the river and stabilizing the riverbank. And as far as the third question, our group was really stacked with people that write and edit for public or government consumption. So, but there's also some desire and willingness to do, sort of cleanup and gardening type tasks as well. And I think that's it, unless anybody from our group can remember something I may not have noted.
Somebody mentioned a boat launch.
Oh yes, that's right, a boat launch, a boat or kayak launch. And that would sort of fit in with the idea of a facility that could be used for access in winter.
So would that boat launch be for motor, or would that be just for canoe and kayak?
I think we were talking kayaks and canoes.
Kayak and canoe. Oh, yeah.
So Team 1, is there anyone else from Team 1 that, thank you, Steve, for reporting back on behalf. Not hearing anything. Steve was perfection from Team 1 as a reporter.
He was.
Oh, Shelley's got a hand up, but were you on Team 1? Shelley wasn't in Team 1. Yeah. We'll just get you to take yourself off mute and go ahead, Shelley.
Sorry, I clicked it, but it didn't go off. One thing I just wanted to say is, so I was the archivist at the University of Manitoba, and we realized how much activity there used to be on the Red. That's completely disappeared. And so this whole idea of the Hugo dock, I went down there during the pandemic. There had to have been 1,000 people on the Assiniboine. I mean, it was jammed. And I think that if we could make accessibility areas, like accessible areas to the river, that a lot more people would use it. I mean, people used to go swimming on the river. There used to be, well, you wouldn't do it now, but because of the pollution, but there used to be really robust activities, so.
Yes, there was. I mean, there's really beautiful historical pictures of the campgrounds right near, the mothership. Why can't I remember the name of the curling rink? called the Mothership Curlers. You have to help me out. Granite Curling Club, which was, you know, really traditional park ground. Shirley, you had your hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because a number of people have mentioned this, but during the winter, I decided to walk from the Forks to try and get back home to Warsaw. And so I tried to get off the river, but there was no path or no way of getting up the bank. So I had to kind of turn around and go back and to try and find a way off the river.
Yeah.
So it really would be nice if there was some sort of exit to get off the river. Because you can't, or onto it.
Yeah, I want to acknowledge that I had a horrid weekend where we had allegedly a accessible ramp down to the river. That was a lie, because there was a gap, and it was a very concerning gap. Ward residents, you know, the city was not responding. It was over the weekend. We watched it we sort of celebrated it in, but then it was incomplete and there was a major gap, and it just made it inaccessible, this gap that was there. And so it was filled in, but it wasn't filled in by the city. So this was, you know, work our office tried to advocate for. Again, it was put in, but it just wasn't as accessible as it should have been. And all the way up and down the river, this was an issue. Whether you were in Armstrong's Point, in Riverview, the accessibility to Shelley's Point, folks wanna get down to the river. And I just, you know, I'm trying to recruit for the next mayor of Winnipeg. I want to see the vision of the riverbank be front and center, and green space be front and center in the next election. And that view to the river must be an accessible one. And we have a unique story to tell, I think, from just on the basis of this winter. And we have, you know, the premier expert on this call, Jessie Turner, who disappeared from, she was right there on my screen. There she is, popping back in a different spot, you know, who's done more work on accessibility, a 5-year round in office.
Sherry, it's Donna Marion. Can I just contribute something? A few years ago, some of us who live at 360 and 376 actually were told that it's the Forks, it's the corporation at the Forks that develops the river path, right, in the middle of the river. Therefore, they are responsible for developing access points. So I thought that was an interesting response. I don't know how accurate that is currently or will be in the future, but it just meant that no entity was providing us with safe stairs or some safe way of getting down to the river and back up again.
And I can add to that because there was no garbage receptacles last year, and I think I haunted you, Sherry, sorry. And I was very politely told that, again, what you just said, that it was the Forks' responsibility. They never dignified my emails with a response, and it just, it was a non-issue, but there was no garbage receptacles for coffee containers, dog poop, and there was a lot of traffic. Like, I look out my window that faces the ravine, and it was like a Norman Rockwell painting, and I love the river in the winter. It is fantastic. And if that space on Mulvey could be used for people to put their skates on and keep their boots safely in their stuff and then walk down, it would be absolutely phenomenal.
Jessie, did you want to get in here? I thought I saw you turn your mic off, but you might be frozen. Oh, I think she's frozen right now. Go ahead.
I want to mention that the riverbank there may be extremely unstable, and it makes access right there difficult. So I think we have to look for adjoining properties that might have a better access point. But at least we could have connections, safe connections and accessible connections. Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a really important point. And I have been told that that is a concern right there, that it is eroding really rapidly. There's another space along Armstrong's Point where folks have advocated and had always had actually a space to go down to the riverbank. It's just not safe to do that there. So just like if you all saw the news about the sludge that then ended the time on the river, that horrid outflow. Hey, Elizabeth. You know, you wouldn't want to put a staircase there either, right? There's one thing, and we have to stop doing that, by the way. Like that, that's just horrible. We have
well,
to,
and
we have to
because
stop
of
doing that.
because of the bend there, the water comes around with quite a force, and it is eroding. At any bend in the river, it's really, because that's where it comes around, and it's eroding the riverbanks.
Yeah, yeah. So that's a really important point to know, our riverbank. I want to acknowledge all of the work you did tonight, and I'm going to do that in a report. As soon as I get that photo of the deer standing in the middle, because we know what our cover is. As soon as I get that photo of the deer going that I was promised this evening, I think that's our cover, our first cover of the report back to you on what we did this evening, reporting out. Maybe folks will be able to watch the recording and that might be fine, but I'll make sure that I report back for all the good work that your groups did. I also will be in touch with everyone that has identified as experts that wants to lend a hand, and I'll make sure that I do some follow-up on that. I also want to acknowledge, you know, those of you that want this to be accessible, welcoming, and Indigenous space, and really will think about that. There's so many good ideas here, and I want to acknowledge that too. So this will not be the end, but before we go, I really do want to make a heartfelt announcement on work that we need to do. I mentioned some off the top about rescinding, but I didn't mention this, that, oh, Jessie might be having troubles because she returned into the group here. But I didn't mention this piece, and this piece is really key. When this was going to be sold and it wasn't going to be green space, it disrupted another thing that is happening now. And what you're seeing now is really key to getting it retained as green space. You're seeing the gravel go, but what you don't know is there's a $150,000 investment being made into this as green space. And you, in large part, helped save that. $150,000 to do what Rod told us we need to do, which is haul that gravel out, hopefully repurpose it, but get that soil remediated. It's going to be piled high, and it's going to take probably the rest of the summer to get that gravel out and to start dealing with what's underground. But that is what we disrupted when, you know, when Shirley and you all emailed and said this has to be retained, because that deal was in place. Transit was always supposed to invest into that space and get it back to green space. And so, you know, to provide you comfort, I know we do have to dot an I and cross a T here with respect to rescinding that final bit of that unfortunate land swap. But that work that's happening now is a $150,000 investment into that green space. So I want to make sure that we're ending on a high note tonight, that we're celebrating that $150,000 investment. To me, that, you know, will always be the power of, you know, us working together this term. No matter what I do in my life, I will really remember, you know, that point where we tried to turn this around and we really got it out of the hands of an unfortunate, it would have been, you know, beautiful building maybe, but really it could have ended up in the drink. So that. So that's, I'm muted. Am I muted?
Not now.
Oh, okay. My co-host is you had your hand up, Gwen?
No, sorry, just as admitting someone in it.
Oh, good. No problem. So we have about 2-3 minutes to spare. I want to thank you so much for this time tonight. 2 hours in the middle of summer. Holy cow, you all deserve a round of applause. It's my favorite thing to talk about, gardening, green space, but you know, apparently it's yours too. So thank you so much. We'll be in touch again. We'll circulate this report. We have your emails. I'll be in touch again. But thank you so much from the bottom of my heart. What a wonderful time with you tonight. So thank you.
And thank you.
Yes, thank you, Sherry, for being so approachable and for arranging this. This is wonderful. Thank you.
And thank Sherry for supporting the green space in Winnipeg. You did a marvelous job, Sherry. Marvelous. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Sherry.
Thanks for coming, everybody.